Perfect. Thank you. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for being here today with us and hearing our stories of failure. To Diane and Carmela, thank you so much for putting this amazing event together. I know during quarantine, this is really needed. So big thank you to you both. So Diane, you gave me such a great introduction. I feel like I can skip over most of this, but this is really just an intro to me and a little bit of my background. As Diane said, I do consulting and I also host events. My educational background is actually in science. So I studied something called medical physics, and you can see I'm graduating here. I didn't actively pursue it, and I'll be sharing with you why throughout this talk. Outside of all of that, I love public speaking and I love hiking and traveling, which unfortunately I've had to put on hold just for the time being, but hopefully soon. So going into the beginning of my business, I actually started off FemEvolve for a need for accurate women's health information. So back in 2014, I was diagnosed with a chronic health condition called endometriosis. And endometriosis left me bedridden for most of the month for about 2 years. So you can see here that I'm holding a sign that says I am 1 in 10. And that's because it affects 1 in 10 women worldwide, all in varying degrees, all in different ways. And I really wanted to start raising awareness. I just didn't really know, where to start. And in 2016, it actually started impacting my kidneys. And so far I've had 25 kidney infections since then. But in November of 2016, I actually landed in the ER with septic shock. And septic shock syndrome, it was essentially a life and death. It was a near-death experience for me. And I, at the time, was really scared. I was in a lot of pain. And I was told by the doctor that this was likely my last night to live. This was going to be it. I wasn't going to survive this because it was now spreading to my other organs. Hearing that was really hard, but the hospital was under construction and they said it would be too risky to move me even to the ICU. So they just brought me everything that I needed and said, let's see what happens and let's, try our best here in this room. And I actually shared this gigantic room with all these other patients. And while I was in the room thinking it was my last night, this is what I saw on the screen. So I was thinking to myself, girl, if this is your last night on earth, is this what you want to be watching? I was hoping for Gossip Girl or something a little more, interesting, but I had to settle for a Trump and Hillary debate at the time. Thankfully, I did wake up the next morning and I was now on the path to recovery, but I was left with a rude awakening. I started asking myself why I wasn't doing the thing that I always wanted to do, which was raising awareness about women's health. I had been working in scientific research for so long, and I had seen that there was this disconnect between the scientific community and the public and their understanding of women's health and all these taboo topics. So at the same time, when all this was actually happening, I also found out that my ex was cheating on me and my family home became unsafe to live in. So I actually had to move to my aunt and uncle's home, and I slept on their couch for 7 months. And that's where my entire business was born. Honestly, I didn't want to let anything get me down. I was so determined after that near-death experience that I was like, no way am I going to let anything stop me. Like it was literally a shit show, but I'm like, I'm going to make it out. I'll do whatever I can. And even though I had nothing saved, I wasn't working at the time, and I was still technically a student, I was determined to start this business. So I networked like crazy. I went to 3 to 6 events a week. Fuckup Nights Toronto was just one that really inspired me during that time. And I started asking people what they wanted to see in a magazine and what they would pay, what that entire structure would look like. I ended up building out my network through, and my team as well, through social media. So Facebook and Instagram, as well as networking apps. I honestly had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea, okay? I was just going with it, and I'm like, I'll figure it out as I go along. I'll learn, as I go through. And I had invested in some business courses and communities, so, I thought I would be okay. In January of 2018, we officially launched. We had our launch party, which you can see here. Here's some of my team members. And at the time I was in school and I was also working full-time to pay my team. Like I said, I didn't have anything saved, so I was actually cutting into my credit card, and I had all of this debt accumulating on my credit card and interest as well. So it wasn't a smart idea, but I thought that everything would just kind of work out in a few months and I would be okay. And as the months went on, the expenses grew and grew. These were not typical magazines. They were 40 to 60 pages long. They were glossy and very colorful. And printing anything under 1,000 units left me paying $10 to $12 for just one. So I made the mistake of also not checking competitive pricing at print shops. And I just went with the guy that was closest to me because I ended up falling in love with the quality and how glossy it was. And I kept thinking to myself, no, I can't switch to a new person. So I stuck it out, even though the price point was really, really high. And I didn't actually want to go with a print option. I had been charging for digital memberships, but after our launch, there were so many people requesting for these print issues because they were so beautiful that I decided to do it. What I later realized was that I should have made my digital magazines free, and I should have actually just charged for advertisements. So I could have just ramped up my ad revenue, and I could have had them for completely free online and in an app. So aside from all of that, I was also doing vendor booths at events to raise awareness for my brand. And I sometimes didn't know how many people would be purchasing. So I would bring all these magazines with me, and then I would make one sale or sometimes no sales at all. I genuinely thought that with quality content and great social media, the sales would just come in, but I was constantly running from our finances. I didn't want to look at it because I knew that it wasn't great due to the expenses. And so this is how I felt. This was literally me during that time. And making poor financial decisions started impacting every area of my life, because when I started out, I didn't separate my personal and my business accounts because we weren't incorporated. So what happened was during tax time, everything was very messy for my accountant. And on top of that, I was also taking on a lot of the business debt on my personal account, which, you know, affects your credit score and your credit rating. Everything gets impacted. So you have to be really mindful about that when you're starting out. And it also impacted all of my loved ones. So my boyfriend was footing the bill for many of our dates. I'm a type of person where I believe in 50-50. So that was hard to have to make him pay for most of them. I was happy in the beginning, but then I was like, maybe, you know, I should start paying for some of them, but it just wasn't possible given my finances at the time. And he confessed to me that he was feeling really stressed out. My mom actually gave me a loan to pay for some of my health treatments that weren't covered by provincial healthcare. And I felt so embarrassed asking my friends if we could switch our dinner dates, which were like $30 to $50 dinners, to coffee dates. So it was really embarrassing and really hard to go through that time, but I just had to be honest with the people closest to me. And I already felt like a burden due to all the health issues, but now I also felt like a burden on all of my loved ones due to the financial issues. So it was just kind of adding on to everything. And then with all of the financial stress and all of the burnout that came from running this magazine every single month, my health problems just spiked again. And they got worse and the kidney infections came back. I had to stop working completely. I was not eligible for unemployment and I had no income coming in at the time. And I was flooded with all this business debt from this business that was now failing. I spent many days not wanting to get out of bed or face another day. I seriously went into a depressive state and I didn't know what was next for me or where I would go. I thought that the solution was going to be a crowdfunding campaign. And I actually worked on a Kickstarter video. And when the videographer sent me the video after we filmed it, the audio was so bad. There was a fan in the background that I felt so defeated. I was like, man, all these things keep going wrong. I was so burnt out already. And I didn't want to walk away because for so long I had tied the magazine in with my identity. Like I really believed like FemEvolve was such a big part of me. How could I separate myself from it? But I needed to take a step back. And that was the moment that I decided I need to stop. I need to seriously take a break if my health is being hit by this. I was also in a lot of debt, as I said. I wasn't sure just how much, but when I sat down with my accountant and he made it clear to me, he told me that it was $18,000. And imagine hearing that at 24 years old when you already have student debt. It's really scary, okay? So you have student loans and 18,000, it's no joke. So at the time, what helped me most of all was taking a step back from my business and taking this big picture view. And that's where my pivot was born. And that lack of energy and motivation became the spark for a new revamped business, which is now in the events and consulting industry. And I've now generated more income than I ever thought I could. So it's really incredible being able to take that and kind of turn it into something that actually works. So a lot of people asked me, you know, why do you want to switch FemEvolve? Like, why did you want to rebrand it and start over? And for me, I saw it as FemEvolve brought so many wonderful things into my life. I grew substantially, and I also had so many amazing experiences. For example, this middle picture here, I was a judge at Miss World Canada. I got to be a really active, I got to be an active part of the competition and judging the process. I've also interviewed some really amazing people like Madeline Stewart. She's the world's most famous model with Down syndrome. So I've got to have some really great conversations. But what I want to actually just end off with is a few learning lessons. And I'm sure you've taken a lot so far on the finance side. But for anyone who's starting out a magazine, I highly encourage you to check out Magazines Canada. You can see I'm over here doing a speech with them. They have really great, they have a great conference, but they also have programs that are available to support you and with funding. If you have any sort of creative venture, check out Ontario Creates. They have some government funded programs through there that can also assist you, so you don't have to go through what I did. If you're going to do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign for crowdfunding to raise money, I suggest that you do it at the beginning of your business and not the middle or the end like I did. And that will help you with market validation and raising awareness. And just to keep yourself on track with your finances, I highly recommend QuickBooks or any sort of accounting software. Make sure you track every single thing. Okay, seriously, when it comes to tax time, you're going to say thank you. So make sure you do that. And lastly, join an incubator or accelerator as early as you can, because our theme for tonight has been mentorship, as you've seen. And that's where I met my business mentor, and that's where everything changed for me. And I was really able to be successful having someone way more experienced guide me along the way. So that helped a lot. And honestly, my fuck up just came from a lack of research, diving headfirst into this and not really understanding the costs involved and what would go into this. So make sure you know your costs, know all of your potential revenue streams, try to be creative and come up with new revenue streams in your business, and make it really easy for yourself to get organized and stay organized throughout. Remember that you don't have to spend a ton to succeed. It's more about being strategic and getting a plan in place for yourself to stay organized, and as well as understanding where you're going to go. And also, if you do fail, take it as a learning lesson, and someday you can teach other people what not to do, just as I'm doing right now. Thank you.